The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And if you'd like to send an email, it's xzone at xzoneradiotv.com on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find out what's happening in the world of the X Zone, xzoneradiotv.com, and on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Wow, here we are. The month of October is nearly over, and that means all the little witchies and ghoulies are getting ready to go door knocking, soliciting for candies, and helping the dental profession to keep themselves in business as if they would really need our help. So, just a little bit of advice for you pet owners down there. It's always very stressful on animals when little kids and bigger goblins come knocking on your doors on Halloween. So if you can, put your animals, your cats, your dogs, in a place that they won't be disturbed so they don't get totally upset by the number of people that'll be knocking on your door, ringing your doorbell, and causing chaos when you don't give them enough candy. There's also some great information for pet owners about Halloween and animals on all SPCA websites. Please do me a favor as a pet owner. Check them out because your pets are very valuable to you. They're loved members of your family. And just a little bit of knowledge about how animals react during this time of year will be very beneficial to each and every one of you. My guest this hour is Julie Ryan, and Julie is a psychic and medical intuitive. She possesses the ability to sense various medical conditions and illnesses in individuals. Alongside this, she can also facilitate energetic healing and perceive energy fields. Additionally, she has the unique capability to communicate with both living and deceased spirits. Joining me now is Julie Ryan. And Julie, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob. I'm delighted to be with you.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you discovered what you do is that thing you do.
Well, I'm not one of those psychics who had dead people chasing her since childhood, or if I did, I wouldn't have known what to do with that. I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world and a serial entrepreneur who's founded 9 companies in 5 different industries.
Wow.
And I learned how to be a medical intuitive and psychic medium. And now I teach people all over the world how to do the same.
Is it hard for somebody to become a psychic?
Absolutely not. Everybody has intuitive capabilities when we're born. It's just a matter of developing and enhancing them.
So when did you first develop or become aware that you were a psychic? Because you sounded like a very busy and successful lady. Where did you enter the psychic realm, or when were you brought into the psychic realm by those on the other side?
Well, I had a girlfriend 30 years ago, she's still my friend, who gave me a book for my birthday called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace. And she called herself a medical intuitive. And I had been in the hospital supply industry for years at that point. And I thought, what the heck's a medical intuitive? I'd never heard that term before. And so I read the book and I wanted to know more. Well, Rob, back then we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore to see what else was in there. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. Now, Dr. Brennan is a former NASA physicist. She's the late Dr. Brennan now. She died last year. She was a NASA physicist who parlayed very complex quantum physics principles into understandable English for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. So I read her book. And then I wanted to know more, and I called her school and I said, do you guys have anybody teaching this stuff where I live? And lo and behold, they did. And then I studied with her graduate, for 6 years and paid the equivalent of what it would cost to get an MD or a PhD to learn how to do all of this stuff.
So how do you do your medical intuitive readings?
Yeah.
What would you call it?
Yeah, sessions.
Okay, sessions.
Consults, probably more than anything. I raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit. Takes me a nanosecond. Don't need to meditate for an hour or twirl 3 times and raise your right hand and lift your left leg. I mean, all this stuff,
Mumbo jumbo.
mumbo jumbo, that's just not necessary. Once we connect with spirit, we can do it all. I don't understand why all these different areas are siloed. Like you got the mediums that talk to dead people, you got the pet psychics, you got the people who can do the medical stuff. It's like it's all the same thing. You connect to spirit. So I raise my vibrational level, Rob. It takes me a nanosecond. Close my eyes for a couple seconds. I'll watch a laser beam come from my body. I'm in the Southeast US in Birmingham, Alabama. For instance, it'll come up and hook into you in Canada. And then I'll have a hologram of you in my mind's eye. And
Wow.
it's as if I'm looking at an X-ray or a CT scan or an MRI. And I can see in my mind's eye, Rob, broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer, whatever. And then I watch energetic healings happen and describe that to my clients or people that call into my show. I have a show every Thursday night's call-in show. And it's just really extraordinary, the things that I get to see in my mind's eye. Some of them emulate what I saw in the operating room for all that time, when I was developing new products, testing prototypes, things like that. Sometimes I see healings where something's removed, something's added. And oftentimes I'll see healings that utilize methodologies and devices that haven't been even invented yet. But I'm getting what I call divine downloads the whole time into my head that's describing what's happening and talking to my client about it at the same time. So good thing I'm a girl because I can multitask.
Ooh.
Superpower.
Low blow there to us guys.
But I'm right.
Well, it was nice having you on the show. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. And no, I'm only kidding with you. Yes, I do understand what you're talking about because it is true. And that's what my wife tells me to say to all the ladies who tell me this. So
that's right.
There you go.
Happy wife, happy life, right? Isn't that the saying?
That's true, but Jack Daniels certainly does help. It must be fascinating for you to have had the experience to work in the medical profession, and then would this help you better understand what you see when you're doing your medical intuitive sessions?
Absolutely. Yes. And at the same time, I've been doing this for going on 30 years now. So
you started this when you were 10 years old.
I did something like that.
Yeah, you sound psychic.
You are. But I bought a big full color anatomy book. So it has graphics of here's the vascular system, here's the what the kidneys look like, here's what the liver looks like. And if I see like parts of the brain, I mean, I can tell you it's the front part of the brain or it's the back part of the brain or whatever. I don't know what they're called necessarily without looking at an anatomy book. And I don't know that it really matters so much. I know what all the organs look like now, but some of that I had to look up, especially at the beginning. Even though I'm getting divine downloads of information in my head, I still want to see what it looks like from a visual perspective.
How many people would you say that you've had the success in helping them through medical trials and tribulations?
Oh, tens of thousands. I probably talk to 3,000 people a year.
That must be very gratifying.
It's really fun. The most fun, Rob, though, is when something's healed and they'll go get a subsequent scan at the doctor's office or at the hospital. And let's say a new kidney's been regenerated with stem cell energy or a new spleen or something like that. And the doctors will say, well, that's impossible. Let me redo the films and see what's going on. And even throughout the years, I've had some doctors call me and say, what the heck are you doing? And how does this stuff work? And so that's really fun. I don't really care if it shows up on a scan. I just want my clients to feel better. And I believe I'm part of the healing equation that goes in a symphony of healing modalities with Western medicine, Eastern medicine, energy medicine, chiropractic, whatever. And nobody ever heals anybody else. I think that's the most important thing to remember. We all heal ourselves. those of us that are in this healing profession, whether it be an MD or another medical provider or somebody like me, we're holding that person's hand. We're helping guide them, but it's them who heals themselves.
When it comes to the work that you do as a medical intuitive, is there an age bracket? For example, can you help children, teens, adults, and seniors?
All ages, and even I've worked on many babies in utero.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about all of it too is, again, it's everybody healing themselves. And I talk in analogies a lot, Rob, because I think it gives us a human frame of reference for all this woo-woo stuff that we're talking about. And for instance, if somebody has surgery, at the end of the procedure, the surgeon's going to close the incision with sutures and staples. The surgeon doesn't make that patient's skin grow back. The patient makes their own skin grow back. And I think that's just a simple example of how we heal ourselves.
You and I have to take a break in about 60 seconds. So once again, Julie Ryan is my very special guest Exonation, and Julie has a very special book for you. A gift for you, I should say. Julie, quickly tell our listeners about the gift that they can get.
Angelic attendance, what really happens as we transition from this life into the next.
Ooh.
And everybody that wants a free copy, will send you a free digital and audiobook download. Just go to julieryangift.com. That's julieryangift.com.
All right, X Zone Nation, we'll join Julie on the other side of this short break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening and watching us on channel 32 of Simul TV on the X Zone TV channel, and we're heard around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and AM, FM affiliates around the world. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Julie Ryan is my special guest. AskJulieRyan.com is her website. And for all of you who'd like a copy of Angelic Attendance, what really happens as we transition from this life into the next, visit www.julieryangift.com. Julie, you said before we went to the break that it takes you a nanosecond to basically get yourself into the position where you can actually do your medical intuitive work.
That's right. Or communicate with any spirit, or do past lives, or tell how close to death somebody is. I call it my buffet of psychicness, Rob.
Does it ever shock you what you see when that portal opens and you're able to make that instantaneous communication with the other person?
I don't know that shock it would be the definitive word. I would say more fascinates me.
Okay.
It's fascinating. It's fun. It's interesting. And my poor clients at times, because I'm an inventor of surgical devices. So oftentimes I'll say, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this before. And then I'll describe to them what I'm seeing. So, but it seems like once I see something for the first time, then I'll see it going forward. And it's interesting because all of the healings that I see in my mind's eye and can describe to my clients, Rob, they change over time as my frame of reference changes. For example, early on, I would see organ transplants like they do them in surgery. I'd see the donor patient, I'd see the recipient, all of that. Now I see new organs get formed with stem cell energy. Well, 30 years ago, we didn't know about stem cell energy. Maybe the scientists did, but I don't think the general public did. Now I never see organ transplants. I see them get formed in a mold of the organ. Like I'll see a mold of a kidney and I'll watch stem cell energy go in that mold, and I'll watch that organ get generated. Wow. I'll watch the plumbing get clamped off of the diseased organ. I'll watch that get removed, the new organ get put in. So some of that emulates what I saw in the operating room, but it's all generated with stem cells now.
Can you do a medical scan of me right now?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah. Do you have something in particular you want me to check?
No.
Just from a time standpoint?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm watching a laser beam in my mind's eye coming from Sweet Home, Alabama, here in Birmingham, and it's heading up to you in Canada. All right. Got you shooting energy from your feet up to the top of your head. Were you a smoker at some
Never,
point in your life? Never.
never.
Were you around a smoker?
Yeah, my parents when I was a kid.
Okay. Because I'm seeing some residual smoke and tar in your lungs.
Mm.
So I'm sucking that out. And then at the bottom of your lungs is some residual just tar that looks like molasses to me. It's sticky. And so I'm pulling that out as well and suctioning that. The energy always goes where it's most needed first. In your case, it's your lungs. Have you had any issues with your lungs, or are you having issues with them now?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, pay attention, because if you get something, you want to nip that in the bud, because
Okay.
the
Thank you.
energy went to your lungs first. Sometimes I see things that are asymptomatic, Rob, and we're heading off a problem at the pass before it becomes too much of a problem. And so what I'm watching now is I'm watching a couple of vortices, one in each lung, that's spinning really fast. And what it's doing is it's just like a white tornado in there, cleaning up all the debris and everything that's going on. And then that debris gets sucked out. So imagine there's like a attachment from a vacuum cleaner, or that suction at the dentist they put in your mouth. They're sucking the irrigation fluid.
I am just getting over a cold, so maybe that's what you're seeing.
Maybe I'm seeing gray energy in your lungs, but it's dissipating now and getting sucked out. I'm just sucking out your lungs. I mean,
thanks. And on our first date. Woo. What else do you see?
I don't know. Let me go back in. What happens is I'll make a swipe.
Okay.
And then something will be identified, and then there'll be healing. Then something else will be identified, and there'll be healing. All right. You've got some scar tissue on the left side of your brain. The brain, my analogies are hilarious, Rob, at times. And they're intended to give us a frame of reference, because if you can envision what I'm describing, it helps integrate the healing into your body.
Okay, left side brain. Gotcha.
Left side brain. Did you play sports? Have you ever been in a car accident? Have you had a big fall? Even if you didn't hit your head, you got some scar tissue on the left side of your brain.
Yeah, I fell off a ladder 3 years ago.
Okay. All right. So the brain, here come my fun analogies. The brain, like thick cooked oatmeal, and scar tissue in the brain looks like chicken cartilage, the kind that you'd see inside a chicken breast with the bone in.
Oh.
Scooping that cartilage looking scar tissue out, and then stem cell energy into the divot where it's left. If you take a spoonful of oatmeal, it's going to leave a divot in the oatmeal. Stem cell energy, Rob, looks like a light amber color, has sparkles in it because it's woo-woo. Gotta have sparkles.
Oh, of course.
And it reminds me of this hair gel back in the 60s and 70s called Dippity Doo.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard of that in a few years.
Probably
my kids used to use it.
Yeah, probably 50 years. Spirit has a really good sense of humor. And so Dippity Doo. And then there's a vortex that's spinning above where that divot was, that's been filled with stem cell energy. And that centrifugal force of the vortex is what transforms whatever body part we need from stem cell energy into that actual body part. And the analogy I think that's so fascinating with that is, if you go back to your grade school science lessons, we learned that every cell has a nucleus. Every nucleus is surrounded by cytoplasm. Cytoplasm's a watery gel like Dippity Doo. And our bodies have a centrifugal force that causes the cells to divide and replicate to the tune of billions of them a day. So what I'm watching in my mind's eye is just warp speed for what I see, in these analogies that I have come into my head. So scar tissue, the reason when we see scar tissue in the brain, the reason we want to get it out, Rob, is because it can occlude neural pathways. And neural pathways look like laser beams that crisscross a room as part of a security system in a museum or some kind of office, guarding things. And we don't want those occluded, because that's what I see when somebody has dementia or Alzheimer's. So whenever I see it in the brain, I always get it out.
Son of a gun. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
It's always fascinating to watch and to be part of a reading, because then you get actually the listeners and the viewers actually say, okay, so that's how it works.
Yeah.
and they get a better understanding. Tell us about your book, Angelic Attendants.
It is what happens as we're dying. There's lots of information out there about near-death experiences and the afterlife, Rob, but not so much about what's happening as we're dying. And I think that's really what most of us are afraid of, because if we've been with a loved one, it sometimes can be a really heart-wrenching experience and not a pleasant one. So what I see in my mind's eye is how everybody that's dying is surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and the spirits of deceased pets. And it's a glorious component added to what can oftentimes be a heart-wrenching experience. So the 12 phases of transition are what I call this series of events. And it's how the configuration changes of these angels and deceased loved ones and pets as the person is getting closer and closer to death.
So as we get closer to death, what does the person who is getting ready to make the well, first of all, I've always looked at life and death as, in this realm, I equate us to the caterpillar. And as we get closer to death, to the transition, we get into the cocoon. We build our cocoon. We get ready for that transition. And on the other side, we come out as a butterfly. How close is that to have an analogy?
I think there are a lot of similarities there. I think it's a great analogy, because what I see is that the spirit and the body are all holographic. The body is inside the spirit. I was raised with 12 years of Catholic schools, and I was taught that the spirit is someplace in the chest. That's not what I perceive. What I perceive is that the spirit's the main part of us, and the body's inside, and it's all encapsulated by what I call the energy field membrane. It's kind of like the bag that holds all that energy. It's the container. So as we're dying, our spirit just starts to disconnect from the body, if you will, and it hangs on to the top of the head in a bubble configuration attached to the top of the head that reminds me of a cartoon caption, a speech bubble, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then as the person's getting closer and closer to death, the first spirit to show up is the mother of that person who's dying, or if she's still alive, it's going to be the maternal grandmother. It's always going to be on the maternal line. And then the second person's going to be the father. The father's still alive. It's going to be the maternal grandfather. And again, always on the maternal line. That really surprised me, Rob. I thought God would have like a department of death angels that would come out and run the show. It's not how it happens. Per my perception, with tens of thousands of cases like this. But it's the mother's spirit that's there, and she runs the show. She brings in the angels. She brings in the animal spirits and the other spirits that are there to welcome the person to heaven.
You talked about angels, but angels aren't prevalent in every religious philosophy out there. So how do we justify the fact that angels are universal?
I think angels are mentioned in most of the main religions and different cultures and things like that. They may be called something different. They look like angels would look to a Catholic girl to me. They're big. They got big wings. They're wearing a white gown. They're barefoot. Is that what angels really look like? Who knows? But that's how I was taught they look. Perhaps somebody that's in an indigenous culture, say in the Amazon, they may see angel energy as just a ball of purple fog or something. But spirit's always going to communicate to us in a way that we're going to be able to have a frame of reference based on what our life experiences have been so far.
Is it spirit that is using that as a frame of reference, or is it the person who is transitioning, who uses what they've learned and what they believe in, that creates that illusion of what happens at death?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's a combo platter. Because did you ever see the movie Contact with Jodie Foster?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, one of my faves.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, when she's on a different planet and an alien takes the image of her father.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Because the alien doesn't want to scare her. And
I don't want to scare you, but I've got to take another break here.
Okay.
So we'll continue this with Jodie Foster. Great movie, Contact. Our guest is Julie Ryan, www.askjulieryan.com. And Julie and I will be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell, and if you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, to listen to all the past shows of the X Zone and all the other great programs we produce and syndicate and distribute, www.xzbn.com. We'll be back. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. Julie Ryan is my very special guest. And Julie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here tonight. It's really appreciated.
Oh, my honor.
Julie, if listeners would like to contact you for a one-on-one consultation, what's the best way for them to do that?
AskJulieRyan.com.
It's plain, it's simple, and it's direct to the point. By the way, I love your website.
Thank you.
What is the most interesting case that you've ever worked on?
Oh, gosh. As far as medical or past lives are so much fun.
Let's go with past lives.
Past lives.
Yeah.
Past lives are just fascinating. I was working with a guy who has since passed probably in the last 6 months, I would say. And he was diagnosed with prostate cancer that had metastasized to the bone. And he ran a Fortune 500 company. He was the CEO, publicly traded. And so we were getting information. Past lives, of course, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have to do things differently than most when it comes to past lives. I don't do a past life regression. I do what I call a past life scan, where we find out, we come up with a question, and then I ask, are there any past lives that correlate with this question? And I will be shown the lifetimes, and I'll be given where it was, when it was, and then we'll figure out what the connection is. So this guy, it was interesting because we got that he was an admiral in the late 1700s, Rob. He was a British admiral, and he was best known for some big battle with the French, between the Brits and the French. We got his name, we got where he lived, we got all this information, got the battle that I was alluding to a minute ago, and everything checked out with historic documents, even down to the part of London where he lived and all of that. And the big correlation there was between that life and this life was he was very good at commanding many, many people in his company that he had over 10,000 employees, but not so good at receiving. And this cancer was forcing him to let other people do things for him because he was used to running the show and being the big leader and the big boss, both in that lifetime as an admiral and in this lifetime as a corporate CEO. And so it was really fascinating to explore that because there's always an emotional component that's in place before any kind of medical condition materializes.
Really?
100% of the time. Yes.
That's very interesting. How do we explain past lives? If you've got people who, is this part of reincarnation? Is that what a past life is?
It is. Yes. Yeah. And it's fascinating because there's always a connection between what we're experiencing in this life and what we've experienced usually in many past lives.
Why do we keep coming back? Like, don't we ever get enough? Don't we need a rest between these lives? My goodness, I get tired just thinking about what I have to do tomorrow and what I did yesterday.
Yeah, great question. Well, it's been my experience, Rob, that we keep coming back to look at different perspectives of perhaps the same equation. And oftentimes I'll see a semblance of a past life that will repeat throughout multiple lifetimes. For example, I talked to a woman this morning who last week delivered a wonderful baby boy that seemed to be completely healthy, and he died 3 days later.
Oh my God.
In the neonatal intensive care. And it was just, they were blindsided. They didn't even know that there was anything wrong with them. Well, what we found out was that he and his mom, my client, had been together in many, many past lives, and they'd played different roles. For instance, she played the baby that died. He played the mom who delivered the baby. Both of them perhaps was a dad or a grandparent or a doctor or a colleague or a friend or a sibling, multiple different roles that we can play to see a different perspective of things. And the analogy I like to use for past lives, Rob, is think of Hamlet. How many times has Hamlet been performed since Shakespeare wrote it in 1602?
Too many to count.
Who knows, right?
Exactly.
But think about in what year, what was happening in the world, in what language, where was it performed, by whom, who was the director, who was the producer. All those different variables are going to give us a different perspective of the same script. And that's how I look at past lives, is we come in because we want to explore different perspectives of perhaps the same theme, if you will. And it's usually pretty general.
If this is so, Julie, and I'm trying to fathom this universe that we're in, where did it all start? Like if we have past life after past life after past life after past life due to reincarnation, where does it all start? And where does this information go that we're gathering?
Well, great questions. Where the information goes is what I call the collective consciousness. And so we all have access to any information that we want whenever we want it. It's just a matter of developing the skills to access it. And our heads are like big satellite dishes, is what I teach, Rob. And every thought has a frequency, and every spirit has a frequency that they keep throughout all of their lifetimes. So in order for us to connect with any spirit, all we have to do is just think of them. And that tunes our satellite dish head to their frequency and opens up the equivalent of a two-way radio, or something that, you broadcast on megahertz on these radio stations that you're on. And megahertz is a frequency, right?
Right.
So thoughts are on a frequency. I'm a gal with a communications degree. How did I invent surgical devices that are sold throughout the world? This was long before I learned how to do woo-woo. This was in my 20s when I invented my first devices. I thought of what was going on. I was looking for a solution. I tapped my satellite dish head without knowing what I was doing into a frequency that gave me information that I was able to download and then parlay that into a device. So that's how it works.
Is the collective consciousness like the Akashic records, the universal database?
Similar. Yeah. Akashic records, I equate to more about lifetimes, and collective consciousness, I equate to more about thoughts. And so
aren't thoughts part of a lifetime?
They are, but thoughts are different from lifetimes. Lifetimes are, okay, where were you, in the 17th century? Where were you living at the time? What was your lifetime?
But without a thought, we can't have an action. And an action is part of the body.
Exactly. But what we do is we tune our satellite dish heads into whatever we're thinking about, and then we get information. We all are led to do things. Most of us don't pay attention to most of the thoughts that are coming in to lead us. We pay attention to just a fraction of those. And so that's what makes it so fascinating when we come up with the abilities to really focus on what we're doing, which is easy to do. You just got to learn how to do it. And then you're able to access anything. Likewise, you're able to access any spirit. Who do you want to talk to? Your dead grandma? You want to talk to Elvis? You want to talk to Napoleon? It doesn't matter. You just think of them and they immediately come in.
How do you deal with skepticism? Because I'm sure there are people out there right now saying, oh, come on.
Yeah. I'm a skeptic. I think skepticism is healthy. I think that for me personally, I don't need to try and convince anybody of this stuff. If somebody doesn't want to talk about it, that's fine. I don't bring it up. If they bring it up, it's fine. But I'm fine to talk about the weather or football or whatever they want to discuss. It doesn't matter to me. I don't feel the need to try and convince somebody one way or the other. All I can do is present the information based on my experiences. Sure. And if it resonates with somebody, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too, whatever.
Do you have the, excuse me, I'm just battling this darn cold still.
Well, it's because I sucked all that junk out of your lungs. That's why it's coming up and bothering you.
Thanks a lot, friend. Send the Benadryl next time. Yeah, I lost my train of thought here.
I have a point. I have a point I want to make about seeing deceased loved ones and spirits and pets and all and angels and all of that. University-based research, Rob, shows that close to 90% of people see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets as they're getting close to death. 90%. And if you talk to any medical provider that's in a critical care unit or the emergency room or surgery, they have limitless stories.
My wife was a nurse in the hospital where people in the ward where people were getting ready to transition, and she has stories that but my question to her was the relatives and the deceased loved ones that they were seeing that were coming, could these have been a figment of their imagination due to the loss of oxygen, as well as the fact that their body was shutting down?
Great question. And that was taken into account in these university-based studies. And what they found was hallucinations, which we always thought grandma's hallucinating, or it's the morphine that they're giving her, that hospice is giving her. Hallucinations can be unsettling and even upsetting to the patient, whereas when they see deceased loved ones and the spirits of deceased pets and other angels, sometimes religious figures, it's comforting for them. They feel better in seeing them. It gives them peace. It makes them not fear death. So there's a very, very wide range in hallucinations and seeing the spirits of deceased loved ones.
But if at the time of passing, they're seeing religious figures, once again, the religious philosophy that they've believed in throughout their lifetime comes into play.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're Buddhist, you may see Buddha. If you're Christian, you may see Jesus. You may see Muhammad, whoever. Yeah, absolutely.
Got about 2 minutes before my break. Is there any common thread or any common factor when it comes to the transitioning that each and every person feels or is reported back to people like yourself who've done research into it?
Yeah, everybody goes through the 12 phases of transition that I described with angels and deceased loved ones, and the configuration of how they're positioned around the person. And the interesting thing about this, Rob, remember, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So this happens in the case of an instant death, like a homicide or a suicide, or it can take place in a death that takes days, weeks, months, even years to happen. Everybody goes through what I call the 12 phases of transition, which adds a glorious component to the dying process.
An explanation, if you'd like to get your very own copy of Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next, visit www.julieryangift.com. Julie, stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. That's gone by so fast. Explanation, Julie Ryan can be, well, let me just give you a hypothetical situation. You're listening right now or watching right now, and you say, how can I have the same ability to talk to Julie Ryan in person like Rob is doing? Well, it's very simple. Just go to our website, book an appointment, www.askjulieryan.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Julie Ryan and I will return on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And I'm back, as well as Julie Ryan. Her website is askjulieryan.com. All right, we've talked about energy healing. We've talked about the phases of transition. We've talked about you being a medical intuitive. What about telepathic communication? Where
Yeah,
does that fit in?
it's part of the whole equation, Rob. Everybody can do it. We all do it now. We're just not aware of it. Think of a time when you thought of somebody and they either called you or texted you or emailed you or you ran into them. You said, "Oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you," and here you are. Well, that's your intuitive abilities. That's your telepathic skill in action. And we've all done it and we all do it all the time.
I had one question for you that came to mind during this last break. At the point of transition, you were saying that the first person to come, if on the other side, is the mother figure. What happens in a case where a child has been physically, mentally abused by the mother, and that bond has not been the mother love, but the mother hate bond? How does this affect the transition going on to the other side?
The personality of the person when they're in having a human experience stays with the body when somebody dies. All spirits are pure love. Everybody goes to heaven. All spirits go to heaven. That movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven, all people go to heaven too. And so that personality will stay with the body. So we think of somebody who maybe is a figure that's horrific, like a Hitler kind of a person. And we think, oh my gosh, we hope he's burning in hell for forever. Well, the Hitler side of the equation, the human side, was a part he was playing in the movie that was his life during World War II and for how long he lived in that personality. But his spirit always was pure love. So that's what I hear over and over again from Spirit, Rob, is that we all come in and we want to, back to the Hamlet example, we all want to explore and experience different perspectives of the human life equation. Really hard for us to wrap our human minds around. And there are lots of things that I think, oh, I don't know that I understand that. I don't know that I ever will. So where I go in those instances, Rob, is I go to, is it feasible? Yeah. Will I know when I get to heaven? Yeah. Do I need to know now? No. I just go with, is it feasible? And that's enough to satisfy my curious mind.
Should people fear dying?
No, because there's a glorious component to it. Like I've been describing in the 12 phases of transition. We're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. If that's the worst thing that happens to us, okay, bring it on.
How do we know that's true? How do we know that the information that you're getting from wherever is true and accurate, and that it's not misinformation, bad news?
Well, several ways. First of all, the university-based research that shows that 90% of people at the end of life see the spirits of deceased loved ones.
Oh, okay, I understand
There's
that. I understand that, but here comes the but. How do we know what happens on the other side?
All we know is what spirit tells us that usually can be corroborated with the people with whom we're communicating. For example, spirit will say something, let's say I'm talking to your deceased granddad, and he tells me something that you would know that I wouldn't know. I mean, that happens all day, every day when I'm talking with deceased loved ones and their client is asking them questions, and they'll come in with things. I had one really fun thing happened a couple of weeks ago on my show. A young woman called in and her grandfather had just passed, and her grandmother was so distraught. They'd been married for close to 70 years. And the grandfather's spirit said, I want you to give her a daisy for me, not a bouquet of daisies. He was very emphatic. I want you to give her a daisy. And he told her some other things. And so we posted the show and that came up. And then somebody wrote on a comment on the show, what the granddad is referring to is there's a song that was out 50 years ago called I'll Give You a Daisy a Day, Dear. And that's exactly what he was talking about. So they'll give us specifics. So she checked with her grandmother about it. She told her about that. And the grandmother said, yeah, we used to sing that song to each other all the time. So that's something that's very specific that deceased granddad had passed on to his granddaughter to give to his wife. And it was something that meant a lot to the wife. That's just one small example. Another really fun one that I got not too long ago, Rob, was I was talking with a woman who'd lost her husband. And she said, I don't feel him around. I don't see him anywhere. And she said, can he give me a sign? And the husband said, yeah, look for the peacocks. And she said, what? There aren't any peacocks around here. What? That doesn't make any sense. So we got off the phone. She went to her Facebook page when she hung up with me. And the first picture that showed up was a full color picture of a giant peacock.
Wow.
Well, I always say you can't make this stuff up. And that's just a couple of examples of wonderful things that we get that are communication from spirit.
There's a lot of unanswered questions out there. Can you or other people who deal with the satellite dish analogy that you used before, if somebody can go back in time, can they go forward in time as well?
Yes, we can. And there's one caveat to that, though. When we get information about things in the future, we have to remember that they're fluid.
Yeah.
Because there are a bazillion variables that can come in and it can change an outcome or affect an outcome. So whenever somebody says to me, am I going to get married to this guy? Or am I going to move? Am I going to get this job? Am I going to have a baby? Whatever. I say, I can give you what I'm getting at this moment in time. And nothing is set in stone because the future is always fluid. And then I say, if you ever have a psychic that says, I have a 100% accuracy on future events, run the other direction, because nobody does, because there are too many variables.
You brought up an interesting point. How can you tell a good psychic from a charlatan psychic?
Well, if what they're saying resonates, if it makes sense, that's called being a, what do they call that? Being an evidential medium. Like that I'll give you a daisy a day, dear song. I'd never heard of that before, but it meant something to the grandmother who had lost her husband. Things like that. When you get evidence, that makes sense. And spirit communicates in symbols and words and phrases. So it's really important that we stay open to the interpretation. Because somebody says, okay, look for the yellow butterfly, back to your cocoon and butterfly example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't mean you have to see an actual butterfly. It may be the middle of winter. You may see a yellow butterfly in an ad in a magazine. You may see it on the side of a van. You may see it as a piece of jewelry that somebody's wearing. Just be open to how you're going to see it.
But would you agree that if somebody tells you to look for a butterfly, or that a butterfly is going to be part of the answer to the question that you're seeking or the proof that you're seeking, that you will subconsciously scour whatever you're looking at to see if there's a butterfly?
Perhaps. But what I find is that spirit gives us really specific things, like the peacock example.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll have a deceased granddad spirit say, okay, I'm playing with little Sammy, who's my great grandchild, in his room, and his room's painted purple, and he's nuts for toy trains. And we play toy trains at night together. Little children can see spirits and communicate with them, by the way. That starts to cease at about the age of 6 or 7.
Excuse me again, you're working on me. Thank you. Your training and what you offer to people who can join you for what you do.
Yes. Well, actually, 5th, we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia for angelic attendant training is what I call it. And you learn the whole buffet of psychicness. In a weekend, you learn how to do everything that I do. We have people coming in from 3 countries so far for that. And this will be the 20th class that I've taught. And then I have online training too, which helps people learn how to communicate with spirit. And we talk about what the 12 phases of transition are. So that's online, self-paced. And then my in-person training, you learn the whole buffet of psychicness.
What are your final thoughts then? What would you like to share with the X-Zone Nation tonight, Julie? And before that, once again, I apologize for my cold.
Oh,
it's that time of year.
It's okay. That's why I was sucking out your lungs earlier.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah, you bet. The interesting thing, though, is you're on the other end of it because I didn't see inflammation in there. That's why I asked if you were a former smoker, because I was just sucking out the crud that was
Yeah.
the residual left over.
No,
But
I never even took a puff of a cigarette.
yeah,
My
good.
my parents were avid smokers, and that just turned me away from it. Yep, my brother, he's a chain smoker.
Oh gosh.
So,
Yeah. So I think the important thing to remember is that everybody goes to heaven. All
mhm,
spirits are pure love. And why we incarnate is to create and create a lifetime of joy. And so find joy in everything that's happening, even the most horrific things. There's always a silver lining to every cloud. And that sounds very Pollyanna ish. But when you talk to people that have been through horrific experiences, most of the time they will say, yeah, it was awful going through it. And
mhm.
here's what I learned. Here's how I benefited from it. And so keep that in mind.
Let our listeners know how they can get a copy of that book that you're so graciously going to give our listeners who contact you.
JulieRyanGift.com. So JulieRyanGift, gift.com. JulieRyanGift.com.
Julie Ryan, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. I wish you much success. Thank you for doing what you do. And to all the people who do not have the opportunity of talking to you like I've had for this past hour, thank you for everything you've done for all those thousands of people out there. And I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone. Until then, my best to you and continued success. And thanks for what you do, Julie Ryan.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Sending everybody lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah.
Exonation, Julie Ryan has been my guest this hour. Once again, her website, www.askjulieryan.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues right here from our broadcast center and studios in beautiful St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And for those of you who keep asking, where is St. Catharines? Well, we're practically smack dab between Hamilton and Niagara Falls, Ontario. Beautiful place, great wineries, great restaurants, great food, great radio stations. And it's just a great place to be. Come down and visit us. We're very sociable. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue right here on the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't go away.